Well, this video is my very first maiden flight video. I've obviously done some pre-flight checks, launched the drone, and it's now floating around out here at Lake Mathews, California. Light winds, just a very slight breeze, so it's a good day for that. Obviously cloudy, um, but not terribly bad. And have no idea what I'm doing here, just looking at the controls and moving things around and going up and down. Trying not to hit anybody. Luckily, there's only two of us here. I'm over a little rise. The people on the road over there cannot see us, and they would never even notice the drone in the air. This is a Zino, Hubsan Zino drone. And Paula's obviously interested in what's going on based on what she's trying to look at the screen over there. There's several things that I did today with the two batteries that I used, but a lot of it is just trying to move it, the drone around and get used to the controls and understand what the options are and capabilities. There's a little landing pad there you can see. I'll be landing on that hopefully today if I can manage it. And then going forward and not hitting the ground because you're on a hill. I got a hill here, so you just can't go straight forward. You've got to increase your altitude at the same time. And there's no automatic avoidances on this drone. It can hit the ground easily if you're not paying attention. The good news is, and you can't see this here, but on the screen, the controller I'm using in my hands, my iPhone is attached to the bottom of it, and I can see the image that you see here from the drone itself. It transmits the image back to the phone and to the controller, and they call it FPV. It's a first-person video view, and that's how you end up flying these things. So you can either watch the drone or watch the camera to fly using the joysticks to maneuver. You can also set what's called the gimbal to the horizon. Right now that's showing that the camera is pointing outwards pretty much. And then I'm rotating around just to look at the scenery. Going a little too fast. See the jitteriness. This is in 4K, so you get some stutter and jitter when you move too fast because we're going at 30 frames per second. So you need to slow that down or not do it in 4K. And I know I can do 2K and 1080p. I'm not sure if the 2K is allows for 60 frames per second, but the 4K only allows for 30 frames per second. At least that's what I've been told, and I didn't test it, but something to test. If 2K allows for 60 frames per second, that's probably a real good alternative. Obviously, 1080p at 60 would be very good as well. But if 2K can go to 60 frames per second, then that'd be a good option. As you can see when you're in hover, the clarity of the grass, the sky, and the telephone wires and what have you out there is quite excellent. As you move, the faster you move, especially the close-up items, the clarity tends to shrink. Even the distance items do as well. The telephone lines back there, you can see they're not quite as crisp as when you're just on a hover. Again, going to a lower resolution, a higher frame rate probably solve that. But then again, I really like the images this takes, and if I learn to control my speed a little bit better, I think that some of that jitteriness can be resolved, and I'll have a much improved video. But right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to fly the darn thing. Every once in a while, in the upper left and upper right corner, you see some blades. They just appear magically, right? Well, what's happening is if I'm dropping the drone down, the front of the drone itself goes down, but the camera is on a gimbal, a 3-axis gimbal, trying to keep it steady and level. This is really important to have good video quality. This is why I bought this particular drone. It's probably the least expensive drone that has a 3-axis gimbal and can shoot in 4K. It's certainly not the best camera or drone out there that can do that, but it is least expensive, and the reviews were actually good for the drone. Had some initial issues when they first came out over a year ago, but most of them have been resolved with the firmware and software updates. But when you drop the front of the drone, the gimbal stays level and the camera stays pointing out, and then the blades appear in the screen. Just briefly, hopefully, unless you're doing a steep dive, and I don't want to do that because I'll crash it into the ground. So if you do see some blades in the upper left or right corners, that's usually because I'm dropping the drone down. It shouldn't happen if you're backing up or going up or in other circumstances, but for a quick drop down, nose down attitude, you're going to probably see some blades. The distance that I've traveled to get to this point, I didn't go too much further than this today, I don't believe. And it's quite high. You'd be surprised that it's close to 200 feet from our landing position and takeoff position. We're at the top of a hill, so it's not 200 feet from the top of this hill, but it is 200 feet high compared to back there at our landing spot. Maybe not this particular shot in the video, but later on we'll see a 200-foot high spot. I didn't go out a whole lot, only a few hundred feet actually. This thing can go 3,200 feet, half a mile. And in California, and maybe it's federal, I forget if it's federal or state, but you're not supposed to fly out of visual sight. You're supposed to be able to see your drone at all times. Well, these drones and others in particular, this drone only has a range of about half a mile, six tenths of a mile actually. The other drones can go 3 miles, 5 miles, 7 miles, 8 miles, but you can't see it. I mean, you can't see this thing at half a mile, let alone as far as they're going out. So it actually violates the rules, if you will, that you're supposed to be flying under to go out past visual sight. I certainly didn't do that because I was just trying to test the drone itself and flying around. And the last thing I want to do on my maiden flight is not see my drone. When I did go out to 200 feet and out about 400 feet, it was tough to spot, to be honest. In this sky in particular, the drone is white. They do have a black model, but they're hard to come by. I'm not sure why they have black, and some people get them and some people get white. When I ordered it, the only model I could order from the U.S. Site was the white model. So they do have a black model. That's almost into the sun. It's not that bad, the video. Oops.